Living alone is not a condition of lack. It is a demonstration of self-mastery, of understanding that true fulfillment begins when a woman discovers the power within her own soul. When a woman chooses to live by herself, without the noise of external validation or the comfort of constant company, she is not isolating, she is identifying. She begins to meet the version of herself that she might have ignored when her world was filled with distractions. There's a sacred stillness that lives in solitude, and within that stillness, the voice of purpose becomes louder, clearer, and stronger. It's in the quiet mornings, when no one is calling her name, that she starts to hear her own spirit whisper, "You are enough." Self-mastery is not about control over others. It's about dominion over your own energy, your thoughts, and your emotions. A woman who can sit with her own company without feeling empty has entered one of the highest realms of personal power. She no longer chases affection to fill her silence because she has transformed silence into sanctuary. She no longer waits for someone to make her feel valuable because she has already accepted that her worth is inherent, not negotiated. She begins to see her solitude as a classroom where life teaches her the most valuable lessons: patience, discipline, discernment, and peace. In the beginning, solitude can feel unfamiliar. It can test the mind because the mind has been trained to associate company with comfort. But when a woman chooses growth over comfort, something inside her shifts. She begins to realize that she was never meant to be completed by another person. She was meant to become whole within herself, and from that wholeness she could connect with others in truth, not in dependency. There is a difference between needing someone and sharing life with someone. A woman who lives alone without a boyfriend understands that difference. She does not reject love, but she refuses to use love as a crutch. She knows that her happiness cannot be handed to her. It must be cultivated from within. Living alone teaches her structure. It sharpens her discipline. There is no one reminding her to wake up early. No one urging her to chase her dreams. No one applauding her small victories. So she becomes her own motivator. She learns how to celebrate herself without waiting for applause. She becomes her own provider of peace, her own source of encouragement, her own standard of excellence. When the bills need paying, she handles them. When her goals need focus, she plans them. When her emotions need regulation, she centers herself. This is self-mastery in its most practical form, the ability to manage one's inner and outer world with grace, strength, and confidence. A woman who has mastered herself does not fear being alone. She understands that loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is the absence of others. Solitude is the presence of self. And when she becomes fully present with herself, she realizes that she has always been surrounded by abundance, the abundance of thought, creativity, purpose, and divine connection. She begins to tap into a higher frequency of life, one that doesn't depend on constant interaction, but on deep introspection. She learns that her peace is not fragile. It's fortified through the moments she spends in reflection and growth. Self-mastery also reshapes how she interacts with the world. She no longer reacts to every situation, she responds with wisdom. She no longer seeks validation from those who cannot see her value. She understands that not everyone is meant to understand her journey. She becomes selective not because she's arrogant, but because she's aware. Her energy becomes sacred ground, and not everyone earns access to it. When she walks into a room, she carries an aura of calm assurance. People feel it before she even speaks. They can sense that she doesn't need anything from them, and that's what makes her powerful. There's a quiet elegance in a woman who lives alone and loves it. She doesn't compete, she doesn't explain, she doesn't justify her choices to the world. She simply lives in alignment with her truth. She invests her time in building her mind, nurturing her dreams, and expanding her vision. Her space becomes her sanctuary, a place where she can think, create, and grow without interference. She decorates her home not to impress others, but to inspire herself. She fills her shelves with books that elevate her consciousness. She plays music that uplifts her spirit. She surrounds herself with symbols of her progress, a reminder that everything she's built has come from her own perseverance. Every day she wakes up alone, but never lonely. She understands that solitude is her sacred space to evolve, to sharpen her awareness, and to cultivate her inner peace. She uses her mornings to align her thoughts, her afternoons to pursue her purpose, and her evenings to express gratitude. She becomes intentional with her life. Her decisions are no longer impulsive, they are guided by intuition and clarity. When challenges come, she doesn't crumble, she observes, she adapts, she overcomes. Because she has mastered herself, she no longer fears change, she embraces it as a sign of growth. Self-mastery transforms her from the inside out. It changes the way she carries herself, the way she speaks, and the way she treats herself. She begins to embody the truth that she once sought in others. She no longer looks for love, she becomes love. She no longer asks for peace, she radiates peace. She no longer depends on someone to lead her, she becomes the leader of her own life. The woman who lives alone without a boyfriend is not alone because she has no one. She is alone because she has chosen to meet the most powerful person she will ever know, herself. Independence is not rebellion. It is a sacred form of responsibility, a declaration that a woman is willing to stand tall in her own energy and carry the weight of her destiny without needing constant reassurance from the outside world. A woman who lives alone without a boyfriend and embraces independence is not rejecting love or companionship. She is simply choosing to understand her own power first. She knows that depending on someone else for emotional or financial security limits her ability to discover the vast potential that lives inside her. When a woman steps into her independence, she begins to walk with an unshakable sense of self-respect. She no longer seeks permission to exist. She no longer waits for validation. She becomes the author of her own narrative, and her independence becomes her statement of truth. There is a different kind of energy that radiates from a woman who takes full ownership of her life. She wakes up knowing that everything she has, everything she dreams of, and everything she becomes is in her hands. That kind of awareness builds strength that no relationship, no material comfort, and no applause could ever replace. She learns to navigate her emotions with maturity. She becomes grounded not because life is easy, but because she has learned to balance herself through every storm. Independence teaches her that peace is not found in control. It's found in alignment with who she truly is and what she truly values. When a woman takes charge of her own space, her energy changes. She begins to move differently. She no longer sees her home as a place to escape life, but as a command center for her dreams. She organizes her environment not just for aesthetics, but for productivity and clarity. Her kitchen becomes a place of nourishment, not just for food but for thought. Her living room becomes a space of reflection. Her mornings are intentional, her nights purposeful. Every routine becomes a ritual of empowerment. Independence makes her mindful. She doesn't waste time complaining about what's missing. She focuses on building what's possible. Financial independence is one of the most transformative aspects of her journey. She understands that money is not just currency, it's freedom. It allows her to choose without fear, to walk away from what doesn't serve her, and to invest in what elevates her. She may not have everything figured out, but she takes pride in earning her own way. She pays her own bills, makes her own decisions, and faces her own challenges with grace. This doesn't mean she rejects help, it means she doesn't depend on it. She knows the difference between partnership and dependence, between being supported and being sustained. Emotional independence gives her even greater power. She no longer rides the emotional roller coaster of other people's opinions. She doesn't crumble under rejection or validation because her sense of worth is rooted in her self-awareness, not in approval. She practices self-soothing, self-understanding, and self-respect. When something goes wrong, she doesn't collapse into despair. She reflects, learns, and adjusts. She knows her emotions are not weaknesses to hide, but signals to interpret. Through emotional independence, she learns the art of detachment, not coldness, but clarity. She can love deeply and still maintain her boundaries. She can care for others without losing herself in the process. Independence also transforms her relationships. When she stands in her own power, she attracts connections built on equality, not dependency. She doesn't look for someone to rescue her. She looks for someone who can grow beside her. She values companionship, but she doesn't crave it as survival. Her relationships become choices, not necessities. And because she doesn't fear being alone, she's free to walk away from anything that compromises her peace. That freedom creates a magnetic energy. People feel drawn to her not because she's needy, but because she's whole. Independence sharpens her focus. She starts setting standards instead of settling for situations. She becomes more intentional with her time, her words, and her company. She no longer allows chaos to dictate her mood. Instead, she creates structure, emotional, mental, and spiritual. She plans her goals, organizes her finances, and cultivates her peace. She doesn't waste her strength chasing validation from others. She invests it in building her purpose. That sense of direction gives her life momentum, and momentum gives her fulfillment. A woman rooted in her independence carries a quiet strength. She doesn't need to prove herself to anyone, yet her presence commands respect. People sense her boundaries even when she doesn't speak them. They notice her composure, her confidence, and the discipline that defines her. Independence has taught her to speak with clarity, walk with intention, and live with authenticity. She is no longer easily swayed by opinions or expectations. Her choices are guided by her vision, not by pressure. She doesn't compete with anyone. She's too busy perfecting her own path. There's a spiritual dimension to her independence, too. She begins to understand that her life is her divine assignment. No one else can live it for her. She sees her challenges as lessons, her solitude as preparation, and her journey as sacred. She stops asking why she's alone and starts asking what she's meant to learn here. That question transforms everything. It shifts her focus from fear to faith, from waiting to creating. She learns to trust her intuition, to listen to the quiet guidance of her inner wisdom. Independence becomes her connection to the higher power within her. Every choice she makes strengthens her sense of identity. She learns to say no without guilt and yes without hesitation. She embraces both her strength and her softness, knowing that independence doesn't mean hardness, it means balance. She can be gentle and firm, giving and guarded, ambitious and peaceful. She becomes the definition of alignment, a woman who knows who she is, where she's going, and what she deserves. And as she walks through life with this energy, she begins to inspire others without even trying. Her independence becomes an unspoken invitation for others to rise into their own strength, to stop settling for comfort, and to start living in purpose. When a woman stops waiting for someone to choose her and begins to choose herself, everything about her life begins to transform. She stops seeing herself as a character in someone else's story and steps into the role of the author of her own. This is the essence of becoming the architect of her destiny. She no longer measures her worth by who notices her, texts her, or validates her. She measures it by the progress she makes toward the life she envisions. She begins to see herself as the designer of her reality, the builder of her future, and the guardian of her peace. Every thought becomes a blueprint, every decision a foundation, every action a brick in the structure of the life she is building with intention and clarity. When a woman decides to take full responsibility for her own destiny, she releases herself from the illusion of rescue. She no longer waits for someone to come and lift her up, because she realizes that the power to rise has always been within her. She understands that destiny is not written in the stars. It's written in her daily habits, her mindset, her choices, and her persistence. She stops saying one day and starts saying today. She knows that if she wants peace, she must build it. If she wants abundance, she must create it. If she wants love, she must become it. She begins to operate from a place of intentional creation rather than emotional reaction. This level of self-awareness changes how she sees her past. She no longer views her pain as punishment. She sees it as preparation. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every moment of rejection becomes part of her construction. The framework of wisdom that allows her to build better, stronger, and smarter. She learns from what broke her instead of being defined by it. She no longer blames others for her circumstances. She studies the lessons hidden within them. This is where her power grows, because accountability is the foundation of creation. She realizes that if she built something she no longer likes, she can tear it down and build again. She becomes fearless about starting over because she knows she's the builder. When a woman begins to architect her destiny, she becomes intentional with her environment. She surrounds herself with inspiration, not interference. She starts eliminating distractions, the toxic relationships, the negative conversations, the draining habits, because she understands that everything around her either contributes to her construction or causes erosion. She chooses carefully what she listens to, what she watches, and what she allows into her space. She knows that her environment shapes her energy, and her energy shapes her destiny. So she cultivates spaces that align with her vision, calm, clear, and creative spaces that remind her of who she is becoming. In this journey of building her destiny, she learns the art of patience. She understands that real creation takes time. She stops comparing her progress to others because she knows her timeline is unique. Some seasons are for building foundations, others for decorating the structure, and some for resting and observing. She no longer rushes the process because she has learned to trust it. She knows that everything she's building, her mindset, her health, her peace, her success must be done with precision and purpose. Patience becomes her power, and faith becomes her foundation. As she builds, she becomes a woman of vision. She starts thinking beyond the temporary and begins designing for the eternal. She no longer lives only for weekends, compliments, or validation. She lives for meaning. She starts setting long-term goals, not because she's chasing something outside herself, but because she's expressing what's already within. Her dreams stop being distant possibilities and start becoming architectural plans. She visualizes the life she wants with such clarity that her actions begin to align with it automatically. She plans her days like an architect drafts blueprints with precision, purpose, and imagination. Becoming the architect of her destiny also means she begins to trust her inner guidance. She understands that intuition is not random, it's divine intelligence speaking through her. Every time she listens to that quiet inner voice, she finds herself in alignment with something greater. She learns to pause, to reflect, and to follow the subtle nudges that lead her to opportunities, growth, and transformation. She no longer seeks advice from everyone because she knows not everyone is qualified to guide her. She has learned that wisdom comes from stillness, and direction comes from connection to self, to purpose, and to something higher than both. As she builds her destiny, her energy begins to shift. People around her can feel it. She walks differently, speaks differently, and carries herself with the quiet certainty of someone who knows she's on her way somewhere meaningful. Her confidence doesn't come from arrogance, but from alignment. She's not loud, but her energy speaks volumes. She doesn't explain her moves, she just moves. She doesn't argue about her vision, she works toward it. Every action she takes becomes a declaration that she's building something greater than temporary comfort. She's building a legacy. She starts to understand that love will come, but not because she's chasing it. It will come because she has become a magnet for what resonates with her vibration. When she chooses herself, she begins to attract people and opportunities that match her frequency of self-respect and purpose. She no longer fears being alone because she knows she's never without purpose. Her solitude becomes sacred, her independence becomes strength, and her growth becomes unstoppable. Every step she takes with awareness. Every boundary she sets with clarity. Every dream she pursues with faith. Her life becomes a reflection of intentional creation. She learns that every word she speaks, every thought she thinks, every emotion she nurtures is shaping her reality in some way. So she chooses wisely. She speaks life into her goals. She guards her mind from negativity. She protects her peace like a sacred structure. She knows that what she's building is not just a career or a lifestyle. It's a spiritual foundation that will carry her through every season. She becomes the kind of woman who doesn't wait for the right time, because she understands that the right time is when she decides to begin. She becomes the living blueprint of strength, faith, and purpose.